When you think about bird migration, you probably picture a long, epic flight south for the winter. But for some birds, it's just a short trip, up or down a mountain. And it turns out a new study has totally flipped our understanding of why they make these small but really critical journeys.
So here's the central mystery, the big question that hooks you. It just seems completely backwards, right? Why on earth would any animal choose to move to a colder, tougher environment right when winter is closing in? It's a puzzle that, for a long time, didn't have a good answer.
For the longest time, we thought we had this all figured out. The answer seemed pretty obvious. We had this simple, neat explanation for these elevational migrations. But as we're about to find out, the most obvious answer, well, it isn't always the right one. The old school theory was super straightforward. Birds have a favorite temperature zone, right? Their little climate sweet spot. So as the seasons change, they just follow that comfort zone up and down the mountain. Too hot at the base? Fly up. Too cold at the peak? Fly down. Makes perfect sense. Or so we thought. And boom, here's where that simple theory just starts to crumble. This quote from Dr. Marius Somvail, the lead author of this study, points out a massive contradiction. Birds were actually seen flying upslope into the cold during the winter. That's the literal opposite of what the temperature theory would have predicted.
Okay, so with the old theory full of holes, researchers did what good researchers do. They dove into a huge global data set to see what was really going on. They needed the hard facts, and what they uncovered was pretty mind-blowing.
Get this. The data showed that almost 37% of these migrating bird populations were already in their ideal temperature range before they even bothered to move. They didn't have to go anywhere. They were perfectly comfortable right where they were. So if it wasn't about staying warm, what in the world was making them fly? And here's the final nail in the coffin for that old temperature-only idea. In tropical mountains, near the equator, the temperature is pretty much the same all year round. And yet, the birds there are still migrating up and down the slopes. This was the proof. Some other, much more powerful force had to be driving them. And that brings us to the new theory, which is honestly so much more elegant. It's not just about one thing, like temperature. It's about something way more fundamental to survival for any living thing. It's all about a bird's energy budget. Just think about it like your own bank account. You only have so much money to spend on bills, groceries, and everything else. Well, for a bird, energy is their currency. They've got a limited supply to spend on all the essentials: staying warm, finding food, avoiding predators, raising chicks. And every single decision, especially where to live, is about making that budget work. So this whole energy budget thing really boils down to three big questions. 1. How easy is it to get food? 2. How many other birds am I competing with for that food? And 3. How much energy am I wasting just trying to stay warm or cool down? A bird is going to move to the spot that gives it the absolute best deal across all three of those factors. Now, having a cool new idea is one thing, but you gotta prove it, right? So, to test this whole energy budget idea, the scientists turned to some seriously powerful computer simulations to see if they could actually recreate what they were seeing in nature. They used this really complex model called the Seasonally Explicit Distribution Simulator, let's just call it SEDS. And the goal was pretty simple. If they created a virtual world where the only thing birds cared about was using their energy as efficiently as possible, would those virtual birds act like real birds? The logic behind the simulation is actually really cool. First, you start with a totally empty virtual mountain. Then, you start adding bird populations, and naturally, they go where the food is best. But as you add more and more birds, it starts to get crowded, the competition gets intense, and eventually, for some of those birds, the best move isn't to stay and fight over leftovers, but to migrate somewhere else where the overall energy math just works out better for them. And the results? They were absolutely stunning. This model, which was based only on energy efficiency, correctly predicted the real-world seasonal movements of birds in 28 out of 34 different mountain ranges across the entire planet. That is a huge win for the energy budget theory. So this is way more than just a cool piece of science. Understanding what really drives these migrations has massive implications for how we protect these birds, especially with our world changing so fast. Because they can use this SEDS model to look into the future. And what it's telling them is that even in the worst-case climate scenarios, mountain birds are probably going to shift their homes upslope by about 129 meters by the year 2100. And remember, they're not just chasing a comfy temperature. They're following the food and resources that are also shifting up the mountain. And this quote from Dr. Sumvile really hits the nail on the head. If we want to help birds, we can't just be looking at temperature maps anymore. We have to understand the whole food web, the insects, the berries, the plants, and figure out how those resources are going to change. And that really leaves us with a critical question to chew on. If a bird's entire survival plan is built around this complex energy calculation tied to the food on the ground, what happens when we, through things like farming or building cities, completely change that resource map? It's a powerful reminder that their world and their energy budget is completely tied up with ours.